All right, today's lesson we're looking at the quadratic formula. You've probably heard of this before. I think it's valuable to see where this comes from. It's not just some magic formula somebody made up. So I want to show you a process. Complete the square, that was our last lesson, right? For the general quadratic equation. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That should look real familiar. So what if we complete the square on that? First of all, we don't want a number out front, so I'm going to divide a through this entire thing, okay? So let's divide a by everything. Let's get it ready to complete the square. We're going to solve for x. So let's subtract this over. So I'm going to write it like this. So I have x squared plus b over a times x plus something equals negative c over a. Again, all I did was rearrange. I subtracted that over. Well, what goes in the box here? Okay, remember, you look at this term. You do half of it and you square it. Well, what's half of b over a? It would be 1/2 times b over a, which would be b over 2a, right? Or 1/2 of ba. And now if we square that, excuse me, we're going to have b squared over 4a squared. Now we need to add it to both sides. So b squared over 4a squared. All right, now let's simplify a little bit. This side's going to factor down. Let me just get rid of this now. You see where that came from, hopefully. So this side's going to factor down a nice perfect square. It's going to be x plus b over 2a quantity squared. Again, square rooted that, or half of that, however you look at it, equals, what if I rearrange this? Okay, over here, see what I'm going to do? b squared over 4a squared minus c over a. Let's get a common denominator. Let's combine this into a single expression. Well, the common denominator looks like 4a squared. So I need to multiply this side by 4a over a. And so let's see what that looks like. So I now have b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Whoops, I forgot to do my 4 there. 4a over 4a. Okay, now remember what we do from here. We're going to square root both sides. So square root, remember I'm going to introduce plus or minus when I do that. So this side becomes x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus. We have b squared minus 4ac under the radical there. And on the bottom, remember it's going to simplify. 4a squared, well that's just 2a. Then I can bring this over, and x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Notice we'd have a common denominator there. This is the quadratic formula. Okay, and I would encourage you to write that down. Worth knowing probably, usually in Algebra 2, I mean you'll have it down somewhere. Maybe you go to a higher class, you might want to memorize it. But I would write this on top of your paper. This is what you're going to be using all through the lesson today. So let's go do a couple examples. Alright, use the quadratic formula. Again, here's the quadratic formula I provided for you. I'd write that right on your paper. I like to do this. Let's just identify what's my a. So a is 4. B is also 4, and C is negative 22. In fact, you know what? Before I do that for this problem, I just recognize something. I could factor something out and make these smaller numbers. What if I factored 2 out of everything? So that would be 2 times 2x squared plus 2x minus 11 equals 0. Then you can divide 2 if you want. So I'm going to use this A, this B, and this C just because the numbers are a little smaller. Maybe that makes the numbers nicer. So let's do that. So A equals 2, B equals 2, and C equals negative 11. Now you get the same answer, okay? But this is kind of dividing the 2 out, maybe simplify it. So I encourage my kids, recognize what A, B, and C is. If it's not in this order, make it in this order. Okay, make it look like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Then you can use the quadratic formula. So let's go plug things in. B is 2. So I have negative 2 plus or minus b squared, of course that's 2 squared, minus 4 times a times c, and that's all over 2a. All right, let's clean this up a little bit. So negative 2 plus or minus, let's see what we got here. So I've got 4. Let me just do it right here. 4. I've got negative 4 times 2, that's negative 8 times negative 11, so that'd be 88. So plus 88. Wait, is that right? 8 times 11, yeah. So 88. So this would be square root of 92 all over 4. So can we simplify square root of 92? This is maybe where we try a few things, right? In fact, let me just put a calculator up. Let's try a couple numbers. I'll show you maybe how I try the process if I'm not sure. Let me just scoot that over. So we're looking for perfect squares. How can I simplify 92? Let's see if 4 will go into it. So 92 divided by 4 is 23. Okay, so that'll work for us. So this is the same as negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root 23 all over 4. Then I can simplify that just a little bit. Here's a common mistake I see. Like people will want to simplify this right here. Well, don't do that. Okay, wait till the end because this has a factor we pulled out and this whole thing is divided by 4. So you need to simplify them both. So this would be negative 1 plus or minus, this would simplify to a 1 as well. So I'll just write square root 23 all over 2. See, 2 over 4 becomes 1/2. 2 over 4 becomes 1/2. And this is the way I would write my final answer. Okay? So a little bit of a process. Let me see if I can get rid of my calculator there. So a little bit of a process, but plug it in, use the formula, and then simplify things, clean them up. Let's do one more. So very similar. Now this one's not in the right form, so let's rearrange. So 5x squared minus 2x plus 5 equals 0. Again, make it ax squared plus bx plus c. So a equals 5, b equals negative 2, and c equals 5 for this one. So let's plug stuff in. So negative of negative 2. So basically negative of negative 2 plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c. Make my radical a little longer there. All over 2a. Okay, so negative of negative 2, or the opposite of negative 2, would be 2. Let's see what we get under our radical here. So this would be 4 minus, let's see, 4 times 5 is 20, times 5, that's 100. So 4 minus 100, so that's negative 96. Negative under the radical, that tells me I'm going to be dealing with a complex solution, right? Imaginary numbers. That's over 10. Let's simplify this. Of course, the negative you can just pull out, write it as an I. And 96 we want to simplify. Again, you could just go to a calculator, start dividing stuff in. And 96, I think that's going to be 16 times 6, right? You could try it. So I could pull the 4 out of 16. And so this is 2 plus or minus 4i times the square root of 6 over 10. And again, notice I didn't simplify that yet. Wait till the end. 2 over 10 would reduce to 1/5. So I have 1 plus or minus 4/10 divided 2 out. 2, got my I there. Square root of 6 all over 5. Hey, complex solution, real solution, irrational solution, doesn't matter. Quadratic formula will solve them all. And so want to get a little practice today. Feel good about that process.